Confucius was born in 551 BC during the late Zhou times. His ancestors were members of the aristocracy, who had become virtually poverty-stricken commoners by the time of his birth. As a teenager, Confucius was a passionate learner and became a master in the 6 arts. As an adult, he had served in several minor government positions, but he was unable to find any permanent setups, so around age 30 he began teaching. He was a teacher to sons of the nobility, at a time when formal education was just beginning in China. He traveled from region to region with a small group of disciples. Confucius took little interest in religious matters. Instead, he developed a philosophy that was concerned with how to ensure social order and good government. This emphasis traces its origins in Confucius' longing to be the advisor to a powerful ruler. He believed that such a ruler, with the right advice, could bring about an ideal world. Therefore, he encouraged government leaders to be educated, and stated that the best ruler was a virtuous one who led by example. Confucius taught that harmony resulted when people accepted their place in society. He emphasized the importance of 5 key relationships. In addition, he emphasized filial piety, or respect for parents. During his lifetime, Confucius never wrote down any of his ideas. Upon his death, his students collected his sayings in the Analects. After his death, close to a third of the world's population came under the influence of his ideas. Confucian tradition has been influential in shaping Chinese social relationships and moral thought.
The beliefs of Confucianism revolve around the idea of the cultivation of a virtuous life, which relates to our topic as it would in turn help shape political leaders who would help create an ideal society. Confucius believed in the high god heaven and other Chinese deities. However, he believed that they should be kept at a distance. Confucians strive for perfection, but it is achieved through relationships with other people rather than with gods. This perfection is known as Chun Tzu, meaning gentleman. The 2 concepts that constitute the basis of Confucianism are Li and Zhen. Zhen refers to human-heartedness and what makes man distinctly human. It is pointed inward to a man's heart. Confucius said he never saw it fully expressed, but other virtues do follow its basis. The first principle of Confucianism is to act according to Zhen, transforming from a life ruled by passions to one ruled by enlightened wisdom, as it is the ultimate guide to human action. Li has to do with the proper way to live, in such ways as etiquette, formality, and respect. It is essentially the concrete guide to human relationships. The main aspects of it are the 5 common relationships in Chinese society, which include emperor to subject, where the emperor serves as an example to the subject, father to son. The father serves as a role model to his son, who in turn honors his parents. Husband to wife. Husband serves as head of household and preserves the memory of family ancestors, while the wife is to bear sons and obey her husband. Elder brother to younger brother. The younger brother respects the older brother, while the older brother is responsible for carrying out family rituals for ancestral veneration. Friend to friend. Friends are to respect each other, but the junior is to show deference to the elder one. A person who has combines Li with Zhen is in the position to be a Chengsu.
Confucianism in Chinese politics and government. Confucius's ideas were first developed about 2,500 years ago in about 500 BC. Confucianism believes that in order for government, one must first govern themselves. If a king is virtuous, then it will spread through the kingdom, allowing for everything to run smoothly. Basically, this is saying that by leading by example rather than leading through force, everyone will be happier and will be more willing to follow the rules. This belief is still widely held today. For example, the Pope's example inspires more people to do good rather than the rules the Church gives us. This belief leads to meritocracy, merit meaning knowledge and crasi meaning strength, strength through knowledge. If one wanted to become part of the meritocracy, then one would have to pass a test of morals. To become part of the meritocracy was considered to be one of the highest honors in Chinese government. In 400 BC, with Confucius' death, his ideas slowly began losing prominence. By the beginning of the Song dynasty in AD 960, Taoism and Buddhism a religion originating in India, was gaining popularity over Confucianism. A century after Confucius' death, life in China had gotten worse. States assembled huge armies and were constantly at war with each other. In the 10th century AC, new Confucian scholars revived Confucian ideas, creating a Neo-Confucian era. The greatest of the Neo-Confucian scholars was Zhu Ji. He called on the emperor to set a proper moral example and widespread corruption of the government. Angry advisors to the emperor struck back, labeling Zhu and other Neo-Confucians a rebel clique of false learning. Mencius adopted the teaching of Confucius, but he put forth new ideas on economics, government, and human nature. Mencius defended Confucianism at a time where it could have been completely forgotten in Chinese culture and government. Neo-Confucian ideas lasted until 1905, when the Qing dynasty abandoned them in 1905. In the revolution to create a republic in 1912, the new leaders rejected Confucianism because its focus on the past ignored 20th century science, technology, and democracy. In 1949, communist leader Mao Zedong unsuccessfully tried to remove all remnants of Confucianism from China. After the fall of Imperial China, Confucianism lost much of its power, but in spite of pressure from the West and communist government in China, it continues to be an important force in China, Japan, and other parts of Asia.
Chinese religions are a combination of Chinese folk religion, Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism. They are all integral parts of Chinese culture, and while they all have similarities, they are different in many ways. Taoism is different from Confucianism in the concepts that it teaches. The concepts of the yin and the yang talk about how one cannot have happiness and pleasure without pain and misery. To achieve enlightenment, one must have a balance between the two. The Tao Te Ching was originally meant for an audience of Chinese rulers, much as Confucius intended the philosophy of the Five Harmonies for an audience of Chinese rulers as well. The document was as much about good government as it was about moral behavior. Taoist philosophy is in many ways much more flexible than Confucianism. It emphasizes Wu Wei, enlightened non-action, rather than needless bustle and busy work for its own sake. One prominent feature of Chinese folk religion is adultery. The worship of idols is practiced at home, in public, at small shrines and temples, and in some cases at work. Ancestor worship is even more widespread. It's customary to burn incense and present food offerings as prayers to one's ancestors. For many, it is more a matter of custom and respect than a serious religious belief. Confucianism does not address these specific beliefs and practices, however, it is similar in the sense that both Chinese folk religion and Confucianism are based on respect. Just as Confucius created Confucianism, the Buddha created Buddhism. Buddha created his own path to liberation, and through a combination of insight and meditational practice, he attained the state of enlightenment. He rejected the authority of the Vedas as definitive pronouncements on the nature of the world and our place in it. His most famous principle is of Anatman, which states that ignorance consists in the conceit that there is an I and a mine. His basic teachings are summarized using the Four Noble Truths, which state that there is suffering, there is the origination of suffering, there is the cessation of suffering, and there is a path to the cessation of suffering.